All right, everyone, welcome back to the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Morris. I'm so excited for the show we have lined up for you today. But before we get started, I want to share that if you're ready to fast track your career and achieve extraordinary success, I have a program that will ignite your potential and propel you to new heights. As a high-level executive coach, I specialize in empowering leaders like you to unleash your full potential and excel in your career. Whether you're seeking a rapid advancement in your current career or a seamless transition to a new industry, I'm here to guide you every step of the way. Imagine having a trusted advisor who understands your unique challenges and provides you with a proven roadmap for success. Together, we'll work from your strengths, overcome obstacles, and position you as a magnetic force in the professional world. Now is the time to break free from the limitations holding you back and step into the extraordinary career you deserve. Don't settle for mediocrity when greatness is within your reach. So claim your spot. It all starts with a complimentary session. Just go to renownedleadership.com and click the Book Now button or click the link in the podcast description below. Accelerate your career, embrace your true potential, and become the influential leader you were destined to be. Remember, success favors those who take decisive action. Seize this opportunity and join the ranks of the high-achieving executives who are making waves in their industry. With all that being said, I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. All right, so with all that being said, everybody, I just want to say happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day. And it is my privilege and my pleasure to bring you today a very special podcast just for today. There is going to be another podcast drop tomorrow. But today's a special Independence Day episode of the Renowned Leadership Podcast where I just have a discussion with my good friend, David Nordel. David is a 30-year retired, I struggle with Air Force rank. I apologize. He is a 30-year retired Command Chief Master Sergeant. I think that's how you go. He's basically the Army version of Command Sergeant Major. So he way up there, pretty much as high as you can go as a non-commissioned officer, which is, pretty big deal. So anyway, David is got tons of experience, tons of insight, and I want to warn you towards the end, share a little bit of a combat story that isn't for the faint of heart. So with that being said, if you got kiddos in the car or around you, or if you don't want to hear war stories yourself, then maybe towards the end you just fast forward a little bit through it. It is pretty, it can be pretty upsetting. So, but it is war, and this is what we did for our adult lives, most of our adult lives. So, anywho, David is now the founder and CEO of MaxFab. MaxFab is a veteran-owned business, obviously, that focuses on veteran transition and corporate leadership. Basically, what he does is he helps companies integrate their veterans to get the most value out of this high potential, high yield group of people that come into their business. So it's super entertaining conversation. I hope you guys really like it, and I hope it brings a lot of value to your life. And I can't wait for y'all to hear it. So without further ado, I give you my good friend, David Nordel. Here we go. All right, David, my man. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I think I read in the email you sent me 30 years in the Air Force.
30 years, 6 months, and 24 days.
Only a career military service member can tell you the number of days exactly that they served. I can do the same. And so why is that? Why do we know that number so well?
I just think that it's because we're tied to dates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you an example. I came in the Air Force I got to basic training on November 30th, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I retired on December 1st. Now, December 1st in my life up until that point in time didn't mean anything to me,
Mm-hmm.
but December 1st was my first full day of basic training. It was the day that I put on E5, became an NCO. It was the day that I put on chief, and it was the day that I retired. So every December 1st is just it's an anniversary of all of these things. So I just think that we're so tied to dates and the calendar cycle and your pay, and I came in delayed enlisted. So my pay date was May 7th, right? Even though I came in on November 30th because it was that long ago that, it caught up with you. So I think you're just so tied to dates that and quite frankly, when you retire and somebody hands you a DD 214, you read the thing, and on there it says
Yeah.
exactly how long you've been on there. So yeah,
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough.
yeah,
And you're absolutely right. Because that, for those of you that don't know, the DD 214 is like our certificate that proves that we were in the military and we did all the
yeah,
cool hula things we say we
yeah,
did. And there's no way, to my knowledge, at least there didn't used to be, there's no way to get a new one once you get the
you
original.
you you can get a new one, but you're probably gonna have to talk to your congressman or senator to do it.
Yeah, yeah, it's not a process that you, so
Yeah,
you guard that thing with
it's
your
painful.
life.
Yeah, it's like your birth certificate, your social security card, your wedding certificate, and your death certificate all in one document.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's so cool. So, again, David, thank you so much for everything you've done. I understand fully the sacrifice that goes into a 30-year career in the United States military. It's not easy. It's not easy for your family. It's just, it's hard, but at least for me, it was a labor of love. Like, I miss the military to this day. I miss the Army
sure,
so much. Do
sure.
you still miss the Air Force?
Yeah, you know what you know, and I guess we'll talk a little bit about some of my work with Vet Ready stuff because it really relates to that. It's brother, when you serve as long as we did, you're institutionalized. You're green, I'm blue. I mean, you are that, and that's who you are. And that DNA doesn't come out. I tell people all the time when I'm working with civilians and they ask me about military people, because civilians sometimes will get a little frustrated with our speed. We go into a civilian organization and we show up an hour early to work. We work an hour and a half late. We check our emails on Saturday. We're all ready to go on Sunday. Monday morning we come in rip roaring. They need 3 cups of coffee and it's got to be 9 o'clock before they really engage. And we think we're a tremendous asset, and they just think we're a tremendous ass. And they're like, what's this guy or gal trying to do? Take my job, And that all starts back in basic training, OTS, where however you ended up in uniform, or you get this magical transmission change. And they take out your civilian transmission, they put in your military transmission, and in there's these 2 high gears. And they shift you into the highest gear and you stay there. And the only time you're allowed to downshift is when you're on leave or you're PCS, right? Other than that, you're in this high gear. Even when you're home, even when you're with your family, you're in this high gear. Well, you know what they don't do? They don't take the doggone transmission out when you get out. And so I think what we miss is all of this stuff, because I can tell you there's stuff I don't miss, but we miss all of this stuff that really, it's almost hard to explain. And
Mhm.
it's cliche stuff, but I was doing some of my work for Vet Ready today, and I was reading. I was building a slide, and on the slide, it talks about battle buddies and wingmen and shipmates and what that means. Now, to anybody, those are just words. To us, man, that's life and death.
Mhm.
It's our mental health. It's our chaplain and our preacher and our buddy and a guy to the right and a guy to the left. I mean, it's our survivability. I mean, it means that.
Mhm.
And we build a sense of loyalty to each other. It's just like you and I are on this podcast together. We talked a little bit before we got on there. We already bonded on the Indiana thing, and I've got a great I've got a great story about working at the base in Indiana that is hilarious. So if we have time, I'll tell it because you'll really laugh. But um, But we're bonded forever. We're brothers forever. I mean, if we're in the same room, we kind of just do what we did before we came on the podcast. It is what it is. I know enough about you. I can already tell part of your story. And quite frankly, we'll pick on each other because of our services. But there's a inseparable seam there that we just are not going to let people breach. And so I miss all of that. I
Mhm.
and to have that. The problem is that it comes, it's really been rough, me included. I mean, I feel like I've been through the wash, rinse, spin, dry, fold cycle of all of it. I've been out long enough where, and I made some bad decisions when I got out, and I got into some bad headspace, and that's based on some of my prior experiences, and it's based on reassimilation to the civilian world. And so, yeah, I mean, I love the Air Force. Obviously, I was successful in it. I had people that believed in me, and they grew me, and the opportunities. I mean, between school and leadership training, and just learning people, multicultural. Our country's going through a big struggle with diverse communities and diverse populations. Man, we were in it from day one.
Yeah,
There,
yeah.
there's no hiding from diversity, man. And
No.
and quite frankly, when you're crawling around in the mud or you got your arms knee deep in somebody in an operating room, nobody really cares.
Mm-mm.
And that's, I think that's magical to be able to live in a world like that where all of that is just it's just clouded and fuzzy like it should be. And the only time that there's conflict between brothers and sisters is when one of them's doing something that could cost the whole team, and then you got to line them out a little bit, and they usually appreciate that. So yeah, I miss it, of course.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's so true. And that's exactly what I struggled with the most too, is I just missed that. I missed the environment. And I love your analogy of the gear, the transmission. Like, because that's 100% how I felt. It's like, where is everybody's drive? Where's everybody's passion? Where's everybody's sense of purpose? Like, what is going on in the world? The world sucks. And like just like
Yeah,
you, I got in a really bad headspace. I gained 80 pounds in 10 months. I went from 220 pounds to 300 pounds in literally 10 months. It was horrible. And of course, the more weight I gained, the more depressed I got. It was just a vicious cycle that I had to work through and get out of.
yeah,
And it's funny too, because it wasn't just me, it was my kids. Because my kids grew up in the military too,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So they went to, school on base their entire life.
yeah.
And then, all of a sudden daddy retires and we have to go to a public school. And,
Right.
every single one of my kids hated it. Just,
Sure.
they're like, everybody's weird. They're like, people were picking on kids that were new.
Right.
And
Right.
just simple stupid things that like you and I wouldn't even think of.
Yeah.
But it's like, to my daughter, every year was a new school year for her because either
Right.
we moved
Right.
or her best friends moved.
Isn't it great to watch? My boys are grown and gone now. One will be 30 here in a couple of days, and the other one will be 28 by the end of the year. I love watching them navigate the planet because there is nothing that scares them. There's not. I mean, there's nothing. There's not a room that they can't navigate. There's not a conversation they can't have. It doesn't matter who. They're totally accepting of everything around them, and they kind of roll through the world. It's pretty cool to watch. And I'm thinking some of that I guess has to do with probably their mother, but because she's awesome, and that we can talk about wives in the military, but I just think some of it is that experience, especially
Mhm.
being on in school on base and those kind of things. I think it's tremendous. The only thing my boys tell me about being a military brat that they didn't like is the fact that like I'm going to my 40th class reunion here in a month. And they said, Dad, we'll never go to a class reunion because we were never at a place long enough to have these long bonds. And these people that I'm going to go see in a month, I mean, I grew up with from preschool,
Right.
and you knew them. So they missed that piece. They missed that, I don't have a lifelong friends, like you do and people that I keep up with. But other than that, I don't think they'd trade it for anything. So to your kid's point, that's yeah.
Yeah. And I think my kids are the same way. Like they don't know like that they are perfectly comfortable walking into a room where they know nobody and just having conversations and making new friends because they've
Yeah,
had to do it so many freaking times. It's
yeah,
just second nature
yeah,
to them.
yeah,
And honestly, like to your point, like that is a service to them because as long as they maintain that throughout their entire adult life, that's going to help them navigate the corporate world or
yeah,
whatever business ventures they choose to go on.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And and relationships are everything. That's a soldier airman thing, right? I mean, it's all about relationships,
Hmm.
especially the longer you serve. Your network and who you know and the relationships you've had. That's how you really move things around. Make airmen's or soldiers' lives better. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. In my leadership coaching, when I'm working with people, that's the very first topic we cover actually is personal relationships.
Yeah,
What kind of relationships do you have with your people?
yeah,
And I civilianized leaders books,
right,
right?
right.
And it's like show me your leader's book. Well, what's a leader's book? Well, the leader's book is this as all the information as your employee's husband's name, their wife's name, their parents' names, the parents' date of death, their parents' date of birth, their children's date of birth, the day their pet died. It has all this information, their anniversary.
Yes.
So that all you have to do is like every once a month check it to see where your people are at. And
Hmm.
then you are touching on all the important aspects of their life.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. In the book, I write a chapter called "You Don't Know What You Don't Know, So You Better Get Off Your Butt and Go Find Out." And it's really this phenomenon that started with me. I grew up on a dairy farm, and so everything in life you can probably learn on a farm. It's all kind of right there every single day. Life, death, tragedy, Mother Nature, good, bad, success. It's all happening around you. Hard work. Um, but when I got to basic training on day 4, they made me a squad leader, platoon leader for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had 12 guys to take care of. And, military barracks is about 25 yards long.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my keynotes that I do is called the 25-yard gap, closing the 25-yard gap. I quickly learned that if I didn't cover those 25 yards, I was incapable of being a human being at the right level to lead because you got to go all the way to the other end of the barracks and talk to the last guy in the last bunk to find out what he's about, who he is, how he ticks, all the things that you just mentioned. You have to know that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we're navigating the world at the speed limit that the world has been put on, by the way, we are going way fast, man.
Yeah.
We we brag, metaphorically, we brag about I could see every phone pole when I was driving down the road. And somebody goes, "Did you see the cow, the chicken, the corn?" Well, no, because you are going so fast. The only thing that you can see is the phone poles. And then I think our whole society, maybe the globe, is moving so fast that we're missing things. And so to your point, this personal relationship thing, it requires you to slow down, to pay attention, to retain, and then to be able to regurgitate in a genuine, thoughtful manner. This is not like memorizing a test. It's actually knowing when remembering that you sent somebody home early because they had to get their wife and get their dog because the dog got hit by something and it needed to go to the vet. You got to follow up in 48 hours on the dog.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. And then
That
when the
doesn't.
dog dies, unfortunately, you're giving them a handwritten note of condolence.
Yep, yep. And you're cutting them loose.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you know you're not doing some spreadsheet thing where you go, well, I can't let you go right now because we got a productivity issue and we need to make money. You need to stay on the assembly line. No, you got to go. You got in
Mhm.
fact in fact you're combat ineffective until you go bury your dog.
Yeah.
And that's how we look at it. Then you get out, then your dog gets hit by a car, and then your boss is a jackwagon, and you hate him forever because my dog got hit by a car and my wife had to take him to the vet and it died. And my wife was by herself all day long and they wouldn't let me off work till I got out of there. And by the time I got home, everything was a disaster. And we gauge that as that's a problem. That's a problem with our employer and our employees and or our bosses and our work environment. We're pretty harsh.
Hmm.
Our standards are high all the way through. So um yeah, but I mean, to that point, yeah, that translates to our children. I guess our children probably drive people crazy too, right?
Mine definitely do. In fact, one of my daughters, she got a full ride scholarship to NC State to get her PhD in
Oh, nice.
genetic engineering.
Phew.
And yeah, she is. But and the crazy thing about Izzy is she's not smarter than all the other kids. She brags of that she is, but in all honesty, she's smart, but she's not no freaking Einstein,
Right.
right? She just works that
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
literally she will work until 4 o'clock in the morning, take an hour nap, get up at 5 and go to school. Like I can't tell you how many nights I had to go into her room and be like, babe, put your homework down and go to bed. That project's not due for another 2 weeks. You'll be okay. Like
That's that's every parent wishes they had that problem.
right. And so but that's just how and that's how insanely driven she is. And I'm convinced that she just got that work ethic from watching the environment she was growing up in and
Right.
seeing the work and the determination, the esprit de corps, everything going on around her. It just kind of seeped into her. And now all my kids are not necessarily when it comes to schoolwork, but another one of my daughters is just insane about music and playing instruments. And she can play like six different instruments now, and only been doing it for like 6 years. So I mean, and it's just her passion. It's what she loves.
So
So
I think you're onto something there. Is that because our kids watched us do things that we necessarily didn't think that or didn't didn't turn us on? There's a lot of things in the military that we have to do that most people wouldn't do if they had a choice. And and we're not given the opportunity to just half do them.
mhm.
And I think our kids watched us do stuff. They're like, gosh, I'm glad I don't have to do that. But they watched us do it at an A+ level.
And so it rubbed off on them.
I think so. I mean, because my kids don't complain about much. My oldest son he's a full-time guardsman up in North Dakota. When he was in basic training, the TI was, doing the whirlwind thing. The first 2 weeks was a lot of screaming, and the first week and a half or whatever. He's doing the whirlwind thing, and a couple of the kids are really upset. And one of them looks at him and goes, "This stuff doesn't even bother you." And he goes, "Dude, I was raised by a chief. There's nothing they can do to me. There's nothing they can do to me in this place that hasn't already been done." So there's and you kind of think about it and you go, yeah, sometimes you don't take your rank off when you come home. And I think that they see that though, and they understand about respecting people and how to work with those type of things. They build relationships with their superiors, which is their teachers and those type of things, which makes them want to invest. I think,
Mhm.
so yeah, that's good stuff. Who would have
Yeah,
thought who'd have thought we'd have ran down the military child route? But it's a great conversation. It's a great
well,
conversation.
it is, and I think it's funny because a lot of civilians I talk to that they feel sorry for my kids. Like, oh, I'm sorry your kids had to go through, you being deployed for so many years at a time. My son was born. I didn't see him for the first 16 weeks, or I mean 16 months. I'm sorry. He was born literally the month I left. And
Yeah.
I didn't get home for 16 months. He was walking and talking before I ever met him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so
I
people are like, that's so horrible. That's so hard. I'm like, my kids loved it. They got to travel the world.
yeah, I know. And that's I tell them you'll like this. I guess we're gonna tell kids stories. It's cool. So we were in Japan and the Japanese used to bring their kids to the base school. The more affluent Japanese could bring their kids to the base school to get them to be bilingual.
Mm-hmm.
So on an exchange program, the Japanese families would come and pick your kid up with a bilingual Japanese kid, and they would take them for like a 3-day weekend. Any place in Japan, they would just take your kid. And so, and my oldest, he's, I don't know what he's 12, 13 years old. So yeah, so we go down to the school, we drop them off. Japanese family comes, you do a little bowing and do your little bit of Japanese words, a little bit of English words, hand your kid over, and off they go. 3 days later, he comes back, and we could actually walk from where we were living down to the school. So we walk down to the school. He gets out of the car. We do the handoff. He had a great time, big smile on his face, and we had to walk up a hill to get back to where we lived. And he's walking all jacked up. He looks like he's on a bad ruck march with a bad knee. I mean, he's walking all, and I'm like, what is wrong with this kid, right? And he's just going on and on and on. So we get up to the house, and I said, what is wrong with you? And he goes, I told the Japanese dad that you drink beer, so he loaded up my backpack with microbrews. This kid had like a 6-pack of beer in his backpack that he had been carrying across half of Japan to get home because his dad wanted me to try some local microbrews from wherever they're at in Japan. Most kids don't get to tell a story like that. And that's just one story. Yeah. So yeah, amazing that they just got to do that. And they just hung out. They just went and lived Japanese culture. And yeah, it's good times. Good times.
Yeah, so. It's amazing. My kids got to live in Germany, Poland, Korea. Literally, they got to travel all over the world and see all kinds of cool things. One of my kids' favorite stories is they got to go to the Harry Potter set in the UK.
Yeah.
They got to go actually tour that.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, like they're not done making the movies.
Right.
So like it's a big deal. And they got to go see all that, see how they do it, see Hogwarts. Like to this day, they still talk about that. And they're,
sure.
3 of them are adults.
Yeah.
And so these are things that people don't get to experience whenever they don't live our life. And we're kind of romanticizing it. Trust me, it is not all the fun we're talking about there.
No.
That's like 1% of
yeah. No, there's a lot of being. The other thing is that as soon as you walk out the door, as soon as you grab your gear, throw it on your back, kiss mama, all the tears that go along with that, all the months ahead of time of explaining to them why you're leaving, where you're going, why you're going to be there, that you're going to be fine, that you're with your buddies and all that stuff. And you kiss your wife and you hug her. You get on the plane to nowhere, and the plane lands, and the first time you can make contact with your wife, the frickin' pipe broke in the house, something's flooded, lawnmower's broken, the neighbor threw a rock and hit the kid in the eye. It all happens, all of it, as soon as you're gone. And for some reason, the wives make it all work. It's almost harder. It's almost harder than going down range. It's almost harder. Yeah, it's unbelievably amazing how a military family learns to just maneuver.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Yeah.
I've said for a long time, my kid's mom, she had the hardest job of anybody.
Oh yeah.
Because I was in and out constantly.
Yeah.
And she had to maintain a household with 4 kids for 16 years. Like that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Like
that's just it's absolutely crazy. But so go ahead, man.
I was just gonna say, so you touched on it a little bit, but I know for so many of our brothers and sisters out there, the transition process is just brutal. And I tell people all the time, it is literally the hardest thing I've ever done in my life was take away all the military, all the schools, combat, getting shot, all that stuff that I've done. Transitioning was the single hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And TAPS did not prepare me for it. The Army did not prepare me for it. Nothing prepared me for what was coming. Well, was your experience pretty much the same?
Yeah, so this is a great conversation because it leads into really what I'm doing. I mean, a lot of my work. So a little bit about my journey so that we can so that we can kind of correlate, right? So 30 years, and I get out, and one of the most embarrassing things, knowing this today, so we're going to bounce around a little bit. When young guys are getting out at 4 years or 8 years, they come up to the chief, right, or the sergeant major. They go, "Sergeant major, I'm getting out." And you go, "Oh, normally there's a conversation goes, oh, why are you getting out? You don't want to go out there and do that kind of, you do that, go through that stuff." They said, "No, no, no. What do I need to know?" Dude, I used to say the stupidest things because I didn't know. You better go get a tie. Make sure you press your clothes. Brag about yourself a little bit. Fluff up your resume. If you've been to TAPS, yeah. Don't screw up your DD 214. Let me know how it goes. If I knew then what I know now, the conversation would have went like this: take every day of leave that you have granted and then some extra. Don't do anything. Reconnect with your family at a level that you have not been able to connect with them at because of the speed and the pace that's been going on. Take your time finding a job, and make sure that you find a job in an area that has something that looks like the culture that you came from. At least one or two things that looks like the culture that you came from. Odds are, if you've been to combat, haven't been to combat, but you've been in for a while, you need to go talk to somebody. It might be once, it might be 300 times, it might be for the rest of your life. Go talk to somebody. Get somebody to talk to you about your mental health and how you're feeling, especially if you get wobbly, because you're losing a whole bunch of stuff. Learn your new culture. You immerse yourself into the new culture and start to transition, and just don't throw rocks and be mad because it doesn't look like it did. I got out. I was at the top of my game. I was the command chief for all the intercontinental ballistic missile forces in the United States of America.
Wow.
Lots of people, lots of stuff going on. I'm at the top of my game. I get out. I have a guy offer me a job to manage restaurants, 13 of them. Said, how hard can that be? I've been pushing airmen at large numbers forever. How hard can that be? It's miserable. Worst job I ever had. I learned a lot. Retrospectively, I'm glad I did it, but I wouldn't recommend anybody doing it because I took the first job out of the gate. I had 4 months of terminal leave. I took 29 days or 30 days, went back to work, double dipped. Yeah, that was really cool. Thinking that you're double dipping because, you're getting not worth it. Should have taken every day off. Started eating and drinking way too much. Started doing some hating on people because they were undisciplined savages, these civilians that I was around that couldn't be on time and do things on time. And a lot of them had longer rap sheets than they did resumes. And got in a bad space, man. Got in a bad space. I probably, every other day was at least had a pretty good plan on how to get a gun in my mouth and get it all over with. And then one day I have a huge blood clot in my leg. It all goes to my lungs. It almost kills me. And I say, you know what? I need to immediately square myself up on the things that I can square myself up on. Get back in shape, quit drinking, quit doing anything that quit drinking, quit chewing, all the other stuff that we did, for years. And squared myself up. And once so I've been dry 5 years and a few weeks. Once I got myself at a level of clarity, get right with God and the rest of it. Once I got myself at that level of clarity, I could start really putting this together. And on the transition piece, I think, I've looked at everything out there. You got wounded warriors and go see this person, and here's a card and dial this number, and we're going to get you a job. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, go over here. And there's job fairs everywhere. But those are just way stations to the next drop off. And the final drop off is your job, right? Your job and where you decide to live, right? You were just telling me, you've made a move back to Indiana after years and years and years because your dad's. So whatever drives us to where we live. And you get to this final drop off spot. And so we do, three things every day, right? We sleep, we work, and we have our own 8 hours to ourselves, whatever we do, recreate. We'll just call it recreation. So 1/3 of that is work. And out of everything I've seen out there, I have to forgive the civilian employers for being savages. I'm making a joke because I actually, when I teach this, that's what I say is, we call you savages. I have to forgive them because think about when we had failure in the Army or the Air Force. Think about when one of your soldiers did something. It was bad, broke something expensive. I don't know, put a Humvee in a ditch, whatever it was. Think about that. The first thing that you asked was, were you trained to do that? Are you trained on that piece of equipment? Are you trained on that weapon? It's the first thing you asked. Our civilian employers aren't trained on how to take care of veterans. They're certainly trained on how to take care of somebody in a wheelchair that's deaf in the right ear. They know everything to do with that. You know what ramps need to look like, doors need to look like, bathrooms need to look like. There's a whole plan. Everybody's been, the staff's briefed on it, and somebody knows how to get you out of the building in a fire. A veteran shows up with all of this stuff that you and I have been talking about for the first half an hour. We show up with all of this stuff, and they're like, yeah, just jump into the pile. And then they wonder why we're at work early and we're frustrated and we've got 10,000 bright ideas on how to fix things. And when people don't listen to us, that we get frustrated because we know better, but you don't appreciate me. And quite frankly, if I went down to Walmart right now and stood in the middle of the room and yelled, I was a command chief master sergeant of the United States Air Force, somebody'd say, don't know what that is? Big damn deal. Get in line. It's the way it is. And so there's a big struggle there. Right? Montana, where I'm at, is we're number one in veteran suicide per capita. We're number one in veteran population per capita. We're number one in veteran substance abuse and alcohol abuse, and we're 44th in services. So it's misaligned. We're not going to fix 44th in services overnight because you have to have people move to Montana, and you got to get all the infrastructure built to do those services. But quite frankly, I think our lives get a lot better when our civilian employers do what comes after thank you for your service. When you truly are thankful for somebody doing something, you want to do something in return. And so what I'm offering them is a veteran ready program. Going through exactly this. This is a very, very snapshot piece of that. Going through our culture, going through what we're made of, going through all of the good stuff that we bring, giving us opportunities to come together and solve problems and demonstrate the value of our expertise and what we bring, and in turn to understand some of the things that we may come with. Just because you got shot doesn't mean you have PTSD. You can have PTSD and have a non-combat related thing that looks more like moral injury. But if you understand those things, I guarantee you companies right now are paying millions today, millions of dollars to have their mid-level management sit in a conference room in Nashville, Tennessee, and San Diego and Miami right now. And in that conference room, there's a guy standing up there going, okay, all of you baby boomers and Gen X's, here's what a millennial is. Here's what a Gen Z is. Here's how you lead them. Here's how you do. They're spending millions of dollars on that. Nobody is in a room teaching people how to reassimilate veterans in a respectful, healthy, safe manner so that we can go like this on a gradual glide slope back to where we came from instead of walking off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, absolutely. And there are a couple of things you hit on that were my two biggest pain points. And one of them, I would say the biggest pain point I had was ultimately, and this didn't start right out the gate of my transition, but I would say probably like 4 or 5 months into it. I developed this hatred for civilians. And I thought I was just so much better than everyone I worked with. If you weren't a vet, you weren't nothing. Don't even, and which, is a reflection of my leadership, or lack thereof at that time. But I was, like you said, I was in a bad headspace.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to understand it, first of all. And then once I understood it, it was so hard for me to get rid of it. And thank God today, like I'm pretty good about it. It'll rear up on me every once in a while, but for the most part, it's like, I have that understanding that Thank God you weren't in the military. You wouldn't have survived basic, let alone combat. Like,
Right,
you know,
right.
you made the right decision. Um, but and then the other thing is getting to understand that no one cares and that it's okay. I was a sergeant first class in the United States Army, and I worked my ass off to be a
Sure you did.
sergeant first class in the United States Army.
Sure you did.
And everyone should respect me for it because where I come from, everyone did. You go into the civilian world, no one gives a shit.
They don't. You're the fourth guy in line at Walmart. They don't get. They can get a rat's ass, and they'll say, and they. I tell people to stop, and it. I think it hurts their feelings a little bit, but I tell people stop thanking me for my service, and ask me my story
Hmm.
because we think about it. Think about it, brother. If somebody walked up to you and said, you were in the army? Yeah. What's your story? Think about how different that is. And then we get to train them up. Then you get you get to
Yeah,
train them up. Thank you for your service as an arm's distance, right?
right.
Something that makes them feel better.
It
It's
makes
a
us
not.
feel awkward.
I know it's exactly. It's innocuous to us. You're like, okay, now what do I do with that? And everybody's come up with an answer. And I've got a buddy up in Helena that was a 75th Ranger, and he answers it with America's worth it.
Ooh, that's
America's.
good. I like
I
that one.
know, I know, I know. I don't think I'm going to steal it for a Ranger. That's pretty good because those are big words. But, um, so, uh,
Easy killer.
yeah, yeah, I know, right, right. So, so he, yeah, so that's his answer to it, and mine is, I usually say God bless you or bless you, but uh, I want people to ask us our story because we have a story. I mean, a real story. And you know what it starts off with? Because you and I did it. It starts off with when I left Indiana or when I left the dairy farm, right? That's where it starts. And it does not take us long. We bounced through it. When I left Indiana, I went in the Army. I served this many years. I retired as a sergeant first class, and my MOS was X, Y, and Z, and I did blah, 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 blah. And usually that prompts a question like, oh, did you deploy? Did you do something? And then you go, yeah. They're not going to get down to, you swinging a shovel in a foxhole, against it. We're not going to tell that story anyway, because that's going to just be as awkward too. But you are going to tell the story about where you've been, what you did, how long you did it, why you were there. And some people are brave enough to ask some really, really good questions, which I now appreciate engaging on. It's good for my mental health anyway. So I share, and I've started to share some things in my writing and in my keynote speeches that have been secrets for years. My kids
Mhm.
read my book. My kids read my book. They said, "There's stuff in here we didn't know about you, Dad." And I said, "Because it wasn't time. It
Right.
wasn't time. It wasn't time for you to know. I mean, it's okay now." And I just hope that the work that I'm doing, it's there for us. It's there for you and me. It's there to assuage these painful moments that you and I went through. Uh, but it's also some. I think it's also some elixir for the civilians. I'll give you a statistic. Israel has very, very, very little PTSD or carryover. Very, very little of this phenomenon
Hmm.
that we have in the United States. And they did two studies, and both the studies came up and said the reason is because when you get out of the Israeli army and you go downtown to the bar to have a beer or to get lunch, the guy serving you your beer, the guy that's wiping down the bar, the three guys sitting next to you, and the cook all served in the military.
Hmm. Because it's mandatory.
And it changes the whole math problem on transition.
Right. Because everybody understands.
And if you came out and you had some bad experience, somebody's going to go, yep. And when we were fighting the Egyptians back in XYZ, I had this experience.
Hmm.
And it's the whole country is a mental health clinic.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense because there are so many stories that I can tell you from when I was in combat, whether it was Afghanistan or Iraq, that are absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And if I tell a civilian, and their first question is going to be, well, what'd you do? And then I give them the answer, and they're going to be horrified
Right.
and think I'm just a complete monster. When I was left with no options, it was me or them, as survival. And it was my team. I had to protect my team, or whatever the case may be. I'm not talking about war crimes. I'm talking about combat war.
Yeah.
It requires you to do some pretty horrible things sometimes.
Yeah.
And
And
I can't talk to anybody about that. I can't talk to
right.
my, you know,
Right. Right. Well, the right guys and gals in the room, and if it's safe, then
right,
then
right,
this
right.
then the story comes. Yeah, I mean, and it's weird how it transcends generations. I was duck hunting with a cousin of mine, and I had just gotten back from Somalia in '93. So I got there right after. I mean, literally like the day after, the 2 days after um Black Hawk Down. So like the 5th of October. So Durant's still hostage, still a mess, whole bunch of stuff.
Hmm.
And back then we didn't even know how to deploy. We were coming out of the Cold War. We didn't even know what we were doing. I mean, that's a whole other conversation about, because that was a fiasco. And I came back and I'm duck hunting with my cousin, and his uncle was hunting in the same field but in a different place. So we all ended up at the pickups together at the end of the thing. And he was a combat engineer in the Pacific
Oh, wow.
during World War II. And he said, "Hey, we haven't seen each other for a while." And I kind of told him where I'd been and what I was just getting back from. And he said, "How'd that go?" And I said, "It really sucked." And he said, "Well, give me an example." And I gave him an example. And so we had this conversation, and it's like nobody else in the world is there. It's just the two of us, right?
Hmm.
And so, and he's sharing some stuff about, Bougainville and, Okinawa and, half the other islands that he bounced around. And then I was kind of picking his brain on the whole, hey, I'm back and I'm really pissed off and I want to choke somebody out. And he goes, "Oh yeah, yeah." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, the good thing is you haven't choked anybody out yet, and 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 and
Oh.
we're just kind of going through that stuff. And we finish up, and I get in the truck with my cousin, and his mouth is hanging open because him and his uncle, it was his uncle Eddie, were thick as thieves. I mean, tight
Hmm.
their whole lives. And he goes, "He just had a conversation with you that he has not had with anybody ever." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's amazing." And I said, "No, it's not." I said, "It's just two brothers having a talk, and
Speak the language.
yeah, and well, and he was easing my pain, because when I came back from Somalia, I wanted to choke out a lot of people,
Yeah,
to include my fellow airmen and some of my leaders. I wanted to choke them out. So
totally understand that.
yeah, so it's just a phenomenon. So I think we need to work really hard. Uh, I think as veterans, we almost have, the World War II guys are almost completely gone. And really the old generation now is going to be the Vietnam guys, and to a lesser extent the Korean guys, just because there's less of them. When the lead generation of veterans is now the Vietnam veterans, the narrative is different,
Hmm.
because a lot of those guys, they were conscripted, right,
Right,
into a war that didn't have all the fanfare of World War II.
right,
You came back from World War II and you had a uniform on. You could do no wrong. I mean, you ate
right,
for free. You got the prime jobs, all that kind of stuff. And the country was so littered with veterans, it was like a mental health clinic. The
right.
Israeli thing, right? Vietnam is such an odd phenomenon that when you talk about nuances with veterans and, assimilation or being in the civilian workforce, or the medical issues that they come with, or the mental health issues that they come with, it's a subset of even us. And then you go into our generation, and especially me. I mean, I started off in the Cold War and I ended in 2014, right? My last combat go was 2008 in Iraq during the surge. So I don't know. We may have been there together.
Yeah, we were. I was there.
Yeah. So you didn't come across one of my tables, thank God. Or maybe you did. I don't know. I don't know. We'd have to compare notes. I remember most everybody that came off a helicopter looking not so good. And we got almost all of you guys home, so it was, alive. So that's a whole other, that flag behind me. That's the flag that flew over the trauma center over all your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
All of them that were shot and maimed and blown up, and yeah, for the whole time. And they
No, I didn't eat it until 2013. So
so you 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 knew I was there, so you figured you better not get shot.
I guess.
But so I went through till 14. So think about that. I mean, think about your length of service. Think about who the president was. Think about the politics in the world. Think about the global stability and what we were doing when we got off of airplanes. I laugh at civilians when they use the words boots on the ground. And I actually grabbed a couple of them the other day and I said, can I talk to you about that? And they said, what? And I said, why do you use that? Well, it's just a term. And I said, no, it's not. I said, it's a military term. And actually it kind of is almost a trigger for me. So I explained to him about bog dwell rates and all the crap you got to go through. And your clock didn't start ticking until you put your boot on the ground,
Right.
and even when you were ripping, right. And you're in the middle of a rip, you had to get your boot off of the ground to start the next freaking dwell period so that you could get into recon. And I said, it's a constant cycle and it's actually it's hell on earth. And then I talk about when the Army went to 15-month deployments, which was a bad thing. And I take them to it and they go, really? And I said, yeah. So, and you guys use it like it's like, 2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese. I said, it's not, man. This is not it's not about numbers of people. It's about your clock starting to tick so you can actually freaking keep your ass out of the bad spaces and get it home to the people. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm rambling, but yeah.
No, I totally get it. And I hate it when civilians say things like that too.
Yeah.
Like,
well, they stole it from us. And where it happens at the general officer level. Because the generals intermix with their civilian counterparts to include in industry. And these industry guys get around the generals and then they steal something that they heard, right? Because the general's up there talking in military terminology. And he's going, yeah, when we have boots on the ground and so on and so forth. Well, some guy from Xerox takes it back and goes, yeah, when we get our boots on the ground. And no, it's a different connotation. So
100%. And so that this is such a fascinating conversation. We already talked about it a little bit, and that is, I'm early millennial. I joined the Army August 17th, 2001. That was a great time to go through basic training. Let me tell you.
Where'd you go?
Benning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did you go to jump school after?
Yeah. Well, no, I did. I ended up going to jump school, but it was later, and that's actually where I get my keynote from, which is action breeds clarity, because I'm deathly scared of heights.
Oh, right on.
And I fought like hell to not go to jump school.
Right.
And the military, like they're like, oh yeah, you don't want to go? Really? You're scared of heights? Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's horrible. Okay, well, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna go anyway. That's pretty much how that conversation went. And so anyway,
that's so awesome because that's exactly how. And then it takes just about that long. It takes about. That's awesome.
So that's the main topic of my keynote. But anyway,
I love it.
So yeah, I went through all of that, and I think this generation coming up, I think veterans are able to look at because some of the most insightful things I've heard about millennials and Gen Z have come from veterans, because I think we understand them a little bit better, because everybody's like, oh, the Gen Zers are so lazy. I don't see them as lazy. I see them as just tired of the bullshit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They've been patronized their entire life and they're tired of it.
Yeah. They want reality. They want real people. They want real people. What you're speaking to is, boy, I'm going to really hedge on something here. So I'll be the heavy here and then you can roll with it. I just think that our country as a whole is void of leaders. We lost our ability to train leaders. We don't train leaders. You and I were getting leadership training from the minute we walked in, right? The average person gets leadership training now at 42 years old. That's when
Right.
they get their first leadership training. So that's number one. Number two is when we were small, when we were little people, when we were privates and airmen, our leaders found our strengths, leveraged them,
Mm-hmm.
worked on our weaknesses, but protected us from having that having us get into a catastrophic situation to strengthen our weaknesses. We grew up and we got millennials. I got guys like you. I took guys like you to
Mm-hmm.
combat, and I got millennials, and I thought, here's the deal: is millennials just need reassurance they're doing a good job. They need clarity on what they're doing, right? And you need to follow that up with your leader's book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care about them. That
Right.
resonates more with millennials than anybody else. So you can be a mediocre leader in certain areas, but if you care and you got a little bit of empathy and you can freaking listen, use that communication tool, millennials are just fine.
Mm-hmm.
They're as good as soldier, airman, marine, sailor, you know, Coast Guardsman, Guardian, whatever. They're as good as any. The new generation, the Z generation, can't stand millennials because millennials have this craving for this reassurance that they're doing a good job, and Z's are like, "Would you tell me what I need to know, and then just leave me the hell alone? I'll just get it done." And you go, "I'll be back to check up on you," and they go, "Don't bother." so,
Right.
so there's a whole other thing there. But I think that for us to do what we do, to execute the mission at the level that we execute it at, to keep everybody safe, right? Because getting everybody home is number one, right? When you're in charge with people, getting everybody home is number one. You have to learn those nuances. You have to ask the questions. You don't know what you don't know. You gotta close the 25-yard gap. You got to go to the end of the barracks and talk to the person, right? Even if that's a scary thing to do, you have to do that. We don't do it. This is probably one of the quiet things that frustrates us about the civilian world is how it. Yeah, you're a manager. I don't know what you're doing now exactly, but you're a manager and you're in an office, and there's people swinging off your door frame that don't work for you. They're not even in your section of the company. And all they're doing is finding somebody that will listen to them and show them a little bit of empathy and give them some suggestions on how to navigate life, not just for
Right.
work, but life. And we're pretty damn good at that.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's the difference. And so why shouldn't we this is what I teach to civilians. Take your military people. I want I want every civilian company that I work with, I want them to have a veteran hour. And the process in the veteran hour is for the senior leadership to take a problem that the company has that's very difficult, present it to the veterans during veteran hour, and leave the room and have them come back with penned solutions to the problem. Because we'll fix it. We'll have five COAs. One of them will be totally ridiculous that we just made us giggle and laugh, but we're going to leave it in there anyway. And the
Because
other
it's funny.
four, yeah, right, exactly. And the other four are really cool solutions to get stuff done.
Right.
Why wouldn't you? That gives us back our sense of purpose. It gives us back our sense of respect, and we get some belonging out of that. And we also get to team up with a bunch of veterans. And in 30 seconds, and a bunch of veterans, two guys pop out of there that are alpha guys that are going to be the spokesman for the whole thing. And then those two guys figure out who's going to be the one. And the rest of it's just a lot of good ideas.
Right. Absolutely. And that's exactly how it works. Like he's not even exaggerating. Like that is 100% how that scenario works every single freaking time.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's moving sandbags or if it is a complex problem of how to land nav over this, 45, 55 click, landmass that we got to get from point A to point B and not get killed. Like that is exactly how that's going to work every single time, especially if they don't know each other.
Yeah.
That is such a good point. And I love what you said. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that's, you said you don't know what I do. I will tell you what I do. I am currently developing an app that, and I don't have a cool name for it yet. I'm working on it. Chat GPT is really failing me on this. But
I love ChatGPT.
I do too. but I'm developing an app that basically I'm going to sell to companies, and it's leadership challenge training. So basically, you're going to have 52 challenges that employees will get from day one, starting with the company. They just get put in the system. They get the app. They log into the app. They get day one, or they get challenge one. And it literally takes them through the leadership training you and I got over the course of 52 weeks. And we can hand pick it based on what niche the company is in. So, if
Sure.
you're in real estate, you'll want to focus on maybe a little bit more of a personal aspect of leadership or whatever. So,
Emotional intelligence, yeah, all
right,
that. Yeah.
exactly. So we can kind of a la carte it to
Right.
whatever the company's niche is. And but anyway, your employees are getting that leadership training from day one, and they're getting invested in from day one. You start with this company, download this app. This is something that as a company we buy for you to invest in you. And so that you aren't waiting till you're 45 years old to start getting actual leadership training.
So it's a mentor in the pocket.
Exactly. And that what you said is that's such a frustrating, and I hate using the word trigger, but that triggers me every time because it makes me so mad. Because, like you said, I started getting leadership training when I was 18 freaking years old,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
and I'm not talking about like you know just everything is good,
Yeah.
unicorns and rainbows leadership training. I'm
Yeah.
talking like leadership training, like this is going to save your guy's life one day.
Yeah.
Leadership
Yeah.
training.
Critical conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And separating yourself. That's one thing that civilians have a problem with. When you would promote and all of your buddies didn't, and they're working for you
Yeah.
the next day, in a civilian world, it just turns into some quasi nepotistic looking squishy
Yeah.
yucky thing that
Horrible.
just doesn't
Horrible.
work. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Most of us that figured it out, we slapped our rank and said sucks to be you, and frickin' tighten your shit up, because that's
Yep.
what we do, right?
Do some push-ups
Yeah.
and shut up.
I know. I got a great push-up story. It's an Air Force push-up story, so it's half of Army push-ups, but it's a great push-up story. It's actually in my key. It's in my keynote. But if you and I could sit around and talk one-on-one, it'd be good. I will tell you. I will tell you that if I was around the Army today after my career, they probably would officially made me a member of the 10th Mountain Division, because every place I went, those guys were there. And I'm telling you, I trust them with my life, and I saved a lot of their lives. And what it's a cool unit, man, with a cool
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
And
10th Mountain's awesome.
well, I shouldn't say this because there's some shitty ones, but it's the only unit that I was ever around that those guys were happier to be deployed than they were to be in Fort Drum.
Have you ever been to Fort Drum? There's a reason.
I've been to that part of New York, but so I absolutely 100% get it. But I mean, they would say it out loud. I'd rather be here than Fort Drum, man. Send me to
That place
war.
sucks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in 2008, where were you deployed to in
I
Iraq?
was in I was in the at the trauma center in Balad. So I was the senior
Okay.
enlisted.
Okay.
I was a senior enlisted medic for the whole country. So
Wow.
yeah, I was the guy.
Wow. That's
I was the
insane.
guy.
I spent most of my time in '08, either in around Solder City
Yeah.
or around Toledo.
Oh, so do you remember when we were going to gear up and go street to street in Solder City because they were freaking throwing all that crap into the green zone?
Yeah. Yeah.
My moral injury story is around that operation. I I'm not going to tell it on the radio, but I will. Let me put it this way: when you're going to do an operation that size, military medical doctrine requires you to clear the beds. You have to empty the hospital.
Right.
Well, we had people that had been in that hospital for 3 and 4 months, brother, that were civilians that we had blown
Hmm.
up, that we had blown up.
Hmm.
And the only way to clear the beds, to meet the order, to meet the op order, uh, was to euthanize them. We had to send them to Baghdad, to a place where they couldn't take care of them, so they were going to die. And we killed 12 people, man, to make spaces for you guys. And we never did the operation.
That's I didn't know that. That's crazy.
You do now.
Yeah.
I wrote
And
about
on
it
it,
in my I wrote about it in my second book. I'm gonna get you a book and stuff. I gotta send you some things. So
yeah, definitely. And I want your first book. I
yeah,
didn't get a chance to read it yet,
I'll send it to you.
but well, and that's crazy because that story is exactly what I'm talking about. Like people hear that and they're like, "Oh my God, that's horrible," and I hear that I'm like, "That sucks,"
Yeah.
but that's war.
Yeah, and it was tough
That's
it was tough in a medical unit because I mean, these doctors and I'm a nurse. I put myself through nursing school and I did shock trauma. I worked as a chief. The airmen and my NCOs freaked out when I got there because I just started working and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I said, This is my whole life, shock trauma, and this is my whole life." I moonlighted when I was stationed in California. I moonlighted in the Oakland Bay Area. I saw plenty of gunshot wounds.
I was going to probably saw more combat there than
Yeah,
you
yeah.
ever did in
Well,
Traverse City.
yeah, it's a little rough. I mean, we had a lot when I was in Blood. We had a lot of crazy things happen because it came from all directions.
Yeah,
But
the
yeah,
surge
yeah.
was nuts. The surge was
Well,
definitely nuts.
and it was because that was hunting, right? I think besides the beginning of it, it was the first time that we hunted. I mean, we got so many guys that would come in, and I knew what part of Iraq they would come from by the color of their boots. I,
Totally makes sense.
it's when they'd come off the helicopters and we'd get them in the beds, right? Somebody would throw one of those cheesy curtains in front, right? So that
Hmm.
we had separation. Well, none of the curtains were all cut wrong. So everybody's feet hung out the bottom. And my office was a right-hand turn, a left-hand turn, down a ramp, and I was right in the middle of the trauma bay. So when I heard the helicopters coming, I would come down. But sometimes there would be people in there already. And by the time I left, I could tell you what part of the country you were operating in by the color of your boots.
That's crazy.
Ah, it is
That's
crazy.
so awesome.
It's crazy. The guys would all look at me like, "How do you know?" And I'd say, your boots."
So
Because
I am sorry to cut you off, but we're
no,
running
no,
out
we're
of
good.
time.
I know, it's good.
And but there's one last thing I want to talk to you about real
Sure.
fast, and that is one of the key things I found um, for the healing of myself.
Mhm.
And like you said, it doesn't matter if you've been in the military for an extended period of time, whether you saw combat or not, you need healing. And I'm talking not just physical healing, but you need mental healing, you need spiritual healing, you need healing on every single level that you can be healed. And so one of the best ways I've found for myself was volunteering and finding a way to just help somebody. Can you talk about that on
Yeah,
some sort of level? That
yeah. I agree. We did the ultimate volunteering right when we went in,
right.
and and so a lot of our purpose, besides the fact that when you go to combat, you go to combat for the guy to your right and left, and then it all works back to the flag and the country and freedom and all the other things. But you're serving. And when you volunteer, when you get out, you're back to serving, which kind of realigns you with purpose. Because the one of the blank spots is the purpose, right? What do I
Hmm.
do now?
Absolutely.
I've crescendoed in my life. This is obviously the civilian stuff is 3 steps down from where I was at. And when you volunteer and you're selflessly giving and you're not requiring somebody to pay you and it's your time and you can actually do something that you're passionate about, put your hands on it and see the results that go along with that, it's pretty similar to what we did every day. So I think that's extremely helpful. The other thing is that when you've come up against things like I just told you about, I think when you can give back, and that's the title of the book is Giving Back. When you can give back at that level, uh, it doesn't completely get rid of the scar, but it sure makes it a little easier to work around.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I just, I want to take this time just to encourage all of our brothers and sisters out there. And even if you weren't in the military, mental health is the single most important topic in the world to me. If you want to, if you're a perfect stranger and you see me out on the street and you want me to stop and talk to you for an hour, bring up mental health because we're going to sit there and we're going to have a serious conversation about some mental health. I've had so many friends commit suicide. In fact, I just had a friend commit suicide a couple of weeks ago, and the mental health thing is real. The war, it's an unseen war, but that war is real. But more importantly, is I want the message that it's okay, right? You're not broken. The world tells you you're broken, but you're not. You saw some messed up stuff. You've dealt with some messed up stuff. Like no normal human being is going to come through this unscathed.
Right.
And that's
Right.
okay. Just
Right
get
on.
help. Just find
Yeah.
someone to talk to.
Yeah.
There's tons of resources.
When
So
when when we fall down and hurt our knee, we go to the doctor. When our mind hurts, we don't go to the doctor. And we got to treat health as health. And if
right,
your mind has got a bump on it, go see the doctor because they have people to help you. And
absolutely.
that's the most courageous thing. That's the most courageous thing. Maybe the most courageous thing I ever did was get the help.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I hate the fact that we feel so weak because we need that help. It makes us feel so weak. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there real quick. And of course,
Amen.
if you ever need someone to talk to, I just go to renownedleadership.com. My email address is all over that. You can just click on the contact button and it's going to go straight to my email. I check it literally every 10 minutes. David can verify because I'm sure he checks his emails every 10 minutes, just like I do, because it's a military thing.
That's
So,
right. That's
so,
awesome.
but yeah, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here for you 24/7. I don't care if I know you or don't. And I'm going to help you find the help that you need. Um, so anyway, now that all that's been said, I want to go ahead and give you a chance, David. I want to give you a chance to really plug what you're doing and
Yeah,
tell people how they can find you, get a hold of you, tell them about
sure.
your book, how they can
Sure.
get a hold of that.
Sure. The book's Giving Back Life and Leadership from the Farm to the Combat Zone. And the one to follow that is called Why the Cows Lie Down. And cows lying down is a farm indicator of something that's going to happen. Usually bad weather, and it's a book about quitting, good quitting, bad quitting, and quitting when you don't have a choice. And it covers a lot of areas there, and it's all about getting better and self growth. So I'll make it easy on everybody. It's www.maxfab maxfab.com. On there, you can get my blog, you can get my website, you can listen to the podcast that I've done previous, and this one will get there. And you can order the book while you're there. And look up my Vet Ready program. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're running a business, or you just think that where you work could help with somebody like me or Steve coming in to chat with you, and chat with your bosses and get them as aware of how to take care of and help veterans reassimilate as we do with other people with other challenges. I think it'll make us healthier, happier, and safer, and it'll help us. It'll lower the mental health hurdles out there for us, and give us more avenues to get healthy and get right and reassimilate. So, www.maxfab.com. Send me a note on there. If you send me a request, I can jump on there for free, and we can do an hour-long consult and talk about anything you want. So, and I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And of course, all his links, socials, all that stuff, they're going to be in the show notes down below. So make sure you check that out and go give him some love, some support, some likes, some follows, whatever the case may be. And of course, as always, thank you so much for following me and my podcast. And make sure you give me some love, likes, stars, whatever platform you're on. It's all I wish they would make it all just uniform, all the same, so I don't have to love, like, follow, star, rate, review. Like, just make it all one, please. Like, dress right, dress. Come on, people. So yeah,
Said like a true soldier. That's awesome.
So yeah, just thank you for that, and thank you for all your support. So David, before I let you go, every guest on the Renowned Leadership podcast gets surprised with one final question. And that question is, what advice do you have for someone to lead like a champion?
You have to get up every day and understand that you're second, your people are first, and you need to make a positive impact in their lives every single day in at least one small way.
Wow, absolutely. I think that's definitely in the top 10 of the final ones. That was good. I like that. So that's going to wrap it up, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this very special podcast with my very good friend, David Nordel. And of course, I'm Stephen Morris. And that's going to wrap it up for this week. Everybody, remember, lead like a champion. I'll see you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for joining this week's podcast. And don't forget that if you're ready to unlock your full potential and skyrocket your career, I specialize in empowering ambitious professionals like you to fast track their careers and achieve extraordinary success. No matter if you want rapid advancement in your current role or a seamless transition to a different industry altogether, I'm here to be your trusted guide. Now is the time to break free from the limitations that are holding you back and embrace the extraordinary. Never settle for mediocrity. Claim your spot today. Start with a complimentary session by visiting renownedleadership.com and clicking the Book Now button or following the link in the podcast description below. Accelerate your career, embrace your true potential, and become the influential leader you are destined to be. Remember, success favors those who take decisive action and lead like a champion. So I know only the veterans or active service members are going to understand this, but I really love conversations like this where I get to just kind of geek out with my comrades on just military stuff that only military understands. But still, if you were never in the military, I hope you still got some value out of this. Maybe you understand your uncle who is a veteran, or your nephew or cousin, whoever. Maybe you understand them a little bit better now. Anyway, make sure you head over to maxfab.com and give David plenty of love. And of course, I'm going to have links to his books. I'm going to have links to all his socials and links to his website, all in the show notes or the description below. So make sure you go there, give him tons and tons of love, guys. And of course, once you're done doing that, head over to renownedleadership.com and give me tons and tons of love as well. And of course, at the end, make sure you give me 5 stars, or whatever platform you're on. Just give me some love and give me some comments. And if you don't like my show, tell me how I can get better to better serve you, because ultimately I don't do this for myself. I do this to try to help all of you live your purpose-driven life. So just let me know how I can serve you better, and I'll make sure that I do that. So that wraps up this week, guys. Thank you so much. Happy Independence Day. Make sure you're safe setting off your fireworks today, and I will see you all tomorrow. And in the meantime, everybody, don't forget, lead like a champion. Goodbye.